So we've talked a little bit about where elements are located in the Application Explorer and the AOT and how they're organized. So let's take a deeper look at how we work with elements and customize them within our projects. When editing elements, we use what's called the Element Designer to configure the properties and set different options for that element. For example, we can add fields to a table using the Element Designer. We can then set properties on those fields and tables using the Properties window. We can also find related elements by right-clicking on a particular element and finding other elements that may relate or associate to that one. Here's a screenshot of what the Element Designer looks like. It opens in a tab in Visual Studio and allows you to customize the element. So here we're looking at a table called FM Customer. It belongs to the model Fleet Management. It contains all the various pieces that we can change on a table, such as fields, field groups, relations, and indexes. And we'll look at all these concepts later on in the course. It's important to note that all development is done against local XML files. These XML files are stored on your local disk in folders organized by package and model. The actual XML file contains both the metadata for an element as well as any source code for an element. This means when you customize a table, for example, it will store the properties of the table such as the name and the table type along with any X++ code written for that table all in a single XML file which is stored locally. Here's a view of a properties pane for a particular element. If we select the element type and name will appear here at the top of the properties window. And then within the properties pane, we can scroll up and down and see all the different properties available here for editing this element. They can be organized in different ways. So currently, the properties are organized by category. So we have a category called data, and then all the properties that relate to changing the data of that element. We can also have these properties organized by frequency of use as well as alphabetically. This properties window contains details about the highlighted top-level node. In this case is our table, the FM customer. There are several ways to add a new element to your project. We can right-click the project from the Solution Explorer, and we can choose the Add option, and then we can choose New Item. We can also use the shortcut key Control-Shift-A to add a new item to the project. Now in the middle pane, it's going to show an alphabetical list of all the different element types or artifacts that we can add to our project. These are all AX elements. I'm going to click Table, and I'll give it a name here as DB Table, and choose Add. And you'll notice it'll automatically create a folder called Tables, so that each successive table that we add will be organized in this folder. And it opens up the Element Designer by default. So now I can go in here and right click on fields and add fields to my table, and I can add a different primitive data type. We can also choose our element and press Alt Enter to bring up the properties pane here if it's not already visible in your window layout. So once you add an element, you can go ahead and begin editing it using the Element Designer tab, as well as changing the properties on it. We can close out the Element Designer by choosing the X on the tab here, and we can reopen the Element Designer by right-clicking any element and choosing Open. This will bring back our designer. Now if you notice on the left, we're looking at our model view. So these are all the different models in the system. This current project is associated with the DB Fleet Management model. So if I were to go into another model, for example, the Application Foundation, and I tried to add one of these base enum data types to my project, I can right-click the element, and you'll notice the Add to Project is grayed out. That's because this current project is associated with a different model. Since we're using the extension development approach, I cannot add an element from a different model into this current project that's associated with another model. There are options, however, to add to a new project, which will create a new project connected to this model where this element lives. If we go to our DB Fleet Management model, we don't really have any elements in here yet besides this table that I've just created and added to our project. So if I go to the Data Model node and expand tables, we can see there's my DB table. So once you have an element in your model, you can drag it over to your project. You can also right-click and choose Add to Project. Since we already have this element in our project, we don't need to add it any further. It's just important to note that when you're adding elements to your project, they need to be in the model that your project is associated with.